Hello, all. It's Harold Davis here. Welcome to the Stacks Governance Working Group call, number 76 now. Um, Thank you kindly for Hero and Jason for giving us the time today. We'll go over a couple stand-ups before getting into some of our more detailed updates. I'll start with the Stacks advocates and the work that we've been doing at the GovLab. We've been really focused on this upcoming integration with Stacks chapters. We understand that they want to focus on retention, so we've been, highlighting all of our points of retention on the website and the landing page. Kind of reorganized it to this. Been working alongside Jenny and others and advocates to ensure that we're all set up to take an influx of at least 25 people and trying to get email out to at least 60 of the chapters folks. I think we're on a pretty good pace when it comes to having a team of folks ready to onboard these people into the system when they come through, walk them through the ecosystem, these type of things. So we've been focused really hard on this. A couple teams that have merged or that have emerged in this time to ensure that we're on a nice pace in this. Really appreciative for the advocates that have been pushing it forward and making sure that we're ready. But we've also been doing a lot of active issues, reorganizations, some rewriting of our standard of procedures when it comes to the active issues for the active issues channel in Advocates DAO. Is what we've been using to engage with governance tools. And in previous weeks here, we mentioned a reorganization, and I think we're pretty much technically ready for this, and have made some changes to the standards of procedure. And now we have our reps, 6 clan reps for all 6 clans. This is something that was important for us to ensure we don't hit any snags. And we scaled it down a lot to ensure things don't get messy when folks are trying to navigate what's going on in Advox DAO governance. So there's also some new website pages and things like this to help with navigation on that front. We should see in the next couple of weeks the use of these new 6 reps. A couple of our first issues going through with this new reorganization. So we'll keep folks posted on any updates when it comes to how smoothly our consensus flow is going with our new reps in place. This was a big deal for us. But I'll stop there and see if we get any more details later on. But I know, Hero, you've been heads down with the cab work, and appreciate some updates. Thank you kindly for your time, man.
Oh, do you want me to update?
Yeah, you can do a brief update.
Yeah, I think over the past 2 weeks, purely focusing on getting the cabs activated, and activated just I guess it's a loose term, I can be, but all it is like putting the team together. Everybody's a willing contributor, confirmed willing contributors, and publishing their names publicly. And yeah, so with Jason's help, thank you so much, Jason. We were able to put all the documents together on Stacks Forum, on GitHub, and yesterday I wrote a couple of days ago I wrote a Twitter. So it's blasted everywhere now. So so we have 17 people. The original ask was 10. Just 3 caps alone have 17, and we'll continue to add some more. Today I got one more, Peter from Acadico. I'll probably go into economics, because as we know, like 3 people probably isn't really enough, because you get people sometimes busy, sometimes they are not available. So I think we'll need like a rotation of people available, not available, just realistically speaking. So I think my goal is to build at least 5 person in each cap. And so that's what I've been focusing on past 2 weeks. And the challenges of diversities and ethics we're still in discussion how to form them. So yeah, that conversation will be ongoing, how we best leverage the working group without just shoehorning them into a CAB, but they are still contributing almost like a CAB or somewhat like a SIP editor, but just as a, you know, a group of experts perhaps that CABs go and seek advice whenever appropriate. So yeah, I think that's an interesting discussion where that would lead to. And I can think of like new CABs already, like, you know, could be something to do with like nodes or privacies. So I think maybe, you know, if anybody got new CABs ideas, but I think yeah, those CABs perhaps make a little bit more sense as a CAB than and diversity and ethics, but everything is just a ongoing conversation. So if any feedback, welcome to let me know. But my future focus for the next 2 weeks, so to speak, probably more to do with Stacks 2.1. Jenny wants to get some voter indications if people are going to turn up to vote, but indication of voting, not actual voting. So there will be a survey going out, and so that's that, and other things like SIP editor. So I'm starting to build out and look for people SIP editor. So I think like Jason again, he's got like amazing experience. Somebody like Jason who's able to read the actual doc of the SIP document. But we need more than just Jason. And these smart people with some experience of documents and understand stacks to sort of do the first filtering for the process. So yeah, so that sort of stuff. Yeah, so that's me.
Thank you, Conley Mai. No, really appreciate all your work on the SIPs efforts. The working group has been beautiful turnout in the days that I've been able to make it. So it's been nice to see that as well, along with all of the CAB recruitment. And no, thank you, Conley, for all your due diligence and making sure we do our due diligence on those CABs. And I think it is smart to have some rotation in mind. And the added focus of the SIP editor, and even more of a narrowed pool of people to pick from. So thank you, Colin, for going heads down on those efforts. I know it's important. So yeah, thank you, Colin, and Jason. Thank you, Colin, for hopping in those DMs at the right time as usual.
I appreciate that. I'll jump into my bit as well, but definitely a huge thank you to both of you for all the work you're doing. And it's great. Like we've seen this grow so far beyond what we originally imagined. And as the ecosystem is developing and growing, we have this governance process and then the SIPs process. Like everything's kind of starting to, like, they separated and they're merging, and they probably will separate and they merge. I bet that's a natural pattern, but I love what I'm seeing. I think we're headed down a good direction, and I'm happy to help out where I can. So, aside from that, I don't really have much else to share in the stand-up. The City Coins community is going through some upgrades right now that are taking up a bunch of my time. But following that, I'm sure there's some things we can suss out, either to start like closing out small issues, or like as these new things are coming out, if there's additional things you need help with, I'm happy to look over that or take a look at things as well.
No, yeah, thank you kindly, Jason. Yeah, we'll likely be in touch in coming weeks with this latest push in the consensus flow, and yeah, we'll definitely touch base on some of those exciting things we've been watching form. But yeah, I think this is something we may be able to skip over today without much new people here with us. I know that there's some work going on this front in terms of the grants committee and reviewing this particular grant from Ragnar as it tries to address some of the community representation issues that we've had before. This would be pretty important. I think Ragnar is taking an approach of just seeing how people like how he approaches the position, and that's what the grant consists of. And we'll see if it goes through. I think by the 30th or something like this. So I think it's the most recent updates on that front. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
So yeah, just to confirm I got that right. So there's a grant right now for Ragnar Lee to be, or Ragnar to be on the community board seat. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's going to attend a couple meetings, I believe, is what makes up the grant, and then he'll have something presented to the community based on what he observed in the meeting, but also he'll have something to report from the community side as well, I'd imagine.
I've got a question about that.
Yeah.
So is he just taking what's being said and be there, the voice for the community, like taking back what's being said in the meeting to the community, or is he also taking feedback from the community to the boards?
I don't know if it's like feedback about the board to the board, but I know it'll be like community needs-based reports, based on however he approaches it. So he'll have some reporting to the community about the board stuff, and then he'll have some reporting to the board about community stuff, if I'm not mistaken. And he'll have something artifact-wise to show us to see if we dig his processes, if I'm not mistaken. I just looked over the grant not too long ago.
Yeah, and I just went ahead and commented and linked the grant application in there. But that was the original idea. Is like there's a definite time commitment here that was what we learned through initially doing the community board seat. So we had the individual Sean, and then we had Juliet, both kind of like rotating and deciding who would be in there. I know that CCIP, or I'm sorry, I'm so used to my own stuff that I'm doing. SIP 000 does not preclude anyone from getting paid to do certain things. It's just not included in the definition of the SIP. So I think approaching this through a grant is a really interesting way to do something like this, where it's like, yeah, you're going to be dedicated some time. You're going to be taking the information from the meeting and bringing it back to the community. You're going to be bringing community representation into the meeting where appropriate. And I think learning a little more about like how the meetings are structured, or like a little more of like what we can do with them should really help out. And that was where we do still have a single board seat open for the community, but we just have to look a little bit closer at like how we'd actually implement that or use that, or like what would the advantages be. And I think that's a lot of what he's trying to explore with the grant. So I'd be excited to see just something come through in that sense, because I think that's one link that we have between the community and the foundation that we could probably strengthen as we move forward.
Yeah, no, thank you kindly for posting the grant in there, Jason. It'll be important for folks to follow the line of conversation there as well. There's some back and forth with folks in the community. Yeah, Hiro, did you have anything else on this?
No, I think that's a very good sort of explanation, and like Jason, because of this, and because of the next one is all about board nomination, and even with or without the actual board seat, I think because Ragnar is not really like deep in the community, so to speak, he's kind of new-ish. So I think there's going to be a lot more facilitation that he's going to need to really understand what's going on in the community, I think, from folks like us, people are deep down or who's been here longer. I think that will truly get our representation to him, rather than him just doing himself. So I do like that connection and what we can collaborate with him on aspect.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see how it evolves, and There's already some good back and forth going in the grant thread. That it should evolve it nicely.
And this sort of leads me to the conversation of this particular issue that I posted
Mhm,
yesterday.
mhm,
Previously, it's always been about board seat, and what I said, sort of, okay, we can't get board seat, let's get a team of representatives, right?
mhm,
That can represent the community instead. And then that sort of evolved to sort of the idea I stated in this issue is ecosystem team that we have from different corner of the ecosystem.
mhm,
Then, because I got talking to Mark about the recent ENS influx people, and they need a little support that Hero is not there for.
mhm,
So I actually started forming ideas of how we can have ecosystem moderators or support that they are a team of people that can support different wallets, or different user issues. They can answer questions about, how what is stacking. They can give some of these basic they can help newcomers, help new users that would have little bit knowledge about Bitcoin.
mhm,
So it starts from solving a problem, really, is to solve. There's nobody looking after the user apart from us volunteers from the community, but it's not really sustainable and it doesn't cover all the time zones.
mhm.
So I just would like to see a little bit more consistency. So when user comes to Stacks, they are not waiting for unknown number of hours to get answers,
Mhm.
particularly with transaction issues.
Right.
So basically what I'm saying is that I propose to Mark at Hero that he would fund, maybe through Ecosystem DAO, a team of people that are willing and contributors that are willing to be trained to support the ecosystem. And it would be across Telegram, across different discords, including Stacks Discord. So we have a more holistic solution, and a more sustainable solution rather than just relying on volunteers.
Mhm.
So
No.
that's the sort of idea, and the money can just come from either stacking or it's just a pot of money. Then they get paid more consistently. Doesn't have to be a lot, but something, and users would benefit from that because we have a consistent, friendly support.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
System.
that the idea there is really just creating a decentralized support team, right? Like a
Yes.
group that receive funds somehow and you can choose to be a part of it. Probably in the future you could even have like ranking or like something else different. But when we were talking about this earlier outside of the meeting, I know ecosystem down. I'm in the executor download. That's definitely how I think of it. I could see a DAO that like manages members and manages stacking, manages payouts. But I am also interested, like there's a lot of overlap here with the work being done in the AdVox program with like Cred
Yes.
and Grain, like having the payouts too. So for your side of it, Harold, this is a really interesting idea because like when we did the Stacks 2.0 launch, way back in 2019, leading into 2020, it was there was a few of us that spent at least 8 hours a day providing support for miners. And it was,
Miners.
yeah, because at that
Uh-huh.
time they were launching the
Right.
Stacks 2.0 blockchain. So we were
Right.
right before that happened, there were two competitions that were hosted, and it was basically like who could mine the most blocks on testnet. And the goal was to like go out there, break things, make sure we're ready for main time. And it led to so many questions. And
Yeah.
we started like threading, and we were able to do a lot of that within the Stacks server, but
Mhm.
things weren't as big as they are now. And what we're seeing is, especially when you're looking at a smaller app team, like, okay, you have an idea like BTC.us. It's dedicated to registering BTC names.
Mhm.
Do they need a dedicated support team for when something like this ENS rush comes in? And to me, that's where, like, how do we bridge that to say we know the community members who really like to help people? How do we identify them, and how do we get them paid, and how do we get them into the right channels and like talking to people? So I think there's a huge amount of overlap between a lot of the different work that we're all doing for like paying out bounties or paying out
Yeah,
payments or anything else. And I was
yeah,
set in stone. So I think the goal here is to identify like what the easiest way to implement initially would be, and then just knocking that out to give it a try. Because I think
yeah,
that's great. Covering time,
100%.
covering a whole bunch of different things just by saying you can be a part of the support group. Like that's it.
Yeah, 100%. And there will be a more consistent structure of training them, and offering that sort of education so that it can be sustainable rather than just, oh yeah, you come in and oh, here you go, just support between 9 to 5. I think it needs a little bit more details, a little bit like Clarity Bootcamp almost, but not as, as um, fully fledged, but something, it needs something, a little bit of structure. But I
Well,
just,
yeah. I was gonna say a nice deliverable from that group. It doesn't have to be in the initial implementation, but a nice deliverable from that group would be to use existing documentation resources, and
yeah,
when there's an issue or when there's a problem or when there's something missing, to be responsible for helping to fill that gap. Because anybody
yeah,
can updates to the documentation. There's a little learning curve there. There's some things to do, but even just like opening an issue and saying like, "Hey, I tried to do this. This is what happened. This is where it broke." That is a great starting point, because then later it's like, oh, we've got these 3 issues, we can fix them in this release or something like that too. So that, like, facilitating that flow from where the issue arose in support to a solution that would help people in the future would be a really powerful way for that group to show that they're doing their best in that type of task.
Do you mean like, for example, if we identify some wallet issue and we would raise an issue in Hero GitHub, stuff like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So you're like,
Yeah.
hey, noxes aren't working right.
Oh
And
my
then
God.
as an example-
Okay, so basically, yeah, that's basically like go. That's what I do usually. So I'll just
Well,
make a
that's
list.
that's exactly it. It's like that's what most of us are doing, right? Like that's what I try to do too. If I run into an issue, I will take the extra 15 to 30 minutes to like go through it again and document it with pictures, because I know it's like a lot of times we're like, oh, this broke, and it doesn't answer the why or the how or the
Yeah,
is it on my
I
side or
agree.
your side type thing. Because I've had things where I thought there was an issue, I started documenting it to write it out, and then I'd realize my own mistake. So it's a lot like they call it rubber duck programming. It's like you ask somebody for help and you go, wait, no, I see how to fix it now.
Mhm.
So there's some
Yeah,
value.
yeah. So probably ability to use GitHub, or at least training for that person to have the ability to
Yeah, and you could literally start with creating issues. Like
yeah.
that's it. You
I
don't
mean,
need
that's how I learned. Like I
yeah,
literally didn't
yeah.
know GitHub until this year, and I just learned the hard way. And I file some issue from time to time. Yeah, I think what I will do is I think our plan is almost like structure this out or give a draft of the structure and maybe the roles and responsibilities out. Because I really don't like when conversations are just happening and they keep being in discussion forever. And I want to take some actions to actually get this solved. It's been on my mind for a while now. This missing gap that Hero doesn't want to do anything, nobody want to take responsibility, and they just keep passing the ball between each other, and that's not practical, that's not good for the users, and I've communicated that to Mark. But I think the best thing is actually for everyone to just in terms of the wallets and the website people, they outsource that to the community, and they are accountable and having deliverables. Yeah, I don't know, that's my thought.
Yeah, I think that's great. Start simple, map it out on what it would be. And like for me, I always look at the flow of actions, right? Like what are the actions we're asking people to take? We're asking you to respond to someone, which may end up being like a template or something else. We're looking at like how support tickets will be processed or how like things are known about. And then we'll also look at like how the payouts happen or like what are the expected outcomes. But keeping it very simple in the first iteration will definitely help get
Yes.
something faster. And actually, that reminds me too. I'll have to share. I think I have some screenshots still. There was I think it was the QuickNode server that I jumped into, and they just started supporting Stacks, and I was having some issues, so I reached out to their support. And
Yeah.
one of the cooler things they have is like when you post in the support channel, it moves you into your own thread that's accessible by the people with a support role. So instead of having that conversation as like a long stranded way down the channel, it's
Yeah.
like if you needed support, you get transferred into a ticket. People work with you on the ticket to resolve it, and it's closed out separately. So there are like things we could probably look at in the flow of information or in the flow of work as from getting from A to B and finished that would be really helpful with that. But again, like, yeah, the simpler, the better.
Yeah. If you send me the Discord, I'll have a little play their support system. And I think even and on the good news front is that even I'm getting foundation sort of support on this, because Lewis, for example, even had a chat with Hero about ENS. I think everybody noticed like nobody's getting support when these new guys come. So and obviously Lewis at Foundation cares about all this ENS name registering stuff. So I think he also had a word with Hero. So I think there is probably some big entities are willing to perhaps think about it or perhaps willing to support it. So I think this time the conversation might be easier than previous times. And I think it's great for the ecosystem, because that means we're building these system in the bear market. And when the bull market comes, for example, when there's another mempool blow up or traffic, we'll have the team there already, and that's the point. We are not being reactive, we are being proactive before the stuff even happens.
Mm-hmm. No, that is good news. I know you've been on this for some time, Hero, and no, it's really good news. I know you're happy for that.
It just annoys the fuck out of me, so I have to
know.
fucking do something about it.
No, this is good. I remember, you fleshing out what would be possible in moderation, some time ago, and with Haas and us, and this sounds like more iterations on that, and with the more support, the better. I know it's.
I just want to solve a user problem, right?
Mhm.
And it can be out of any structure. Maybe we can even work with Stacks advocates on this.
No, we already have
Because essentially we'll have some upfront, like front-facing people with users.
Mhm.
And maybe this can, and the reason why I started talking about this is this could potentially link back to this representative, because we're always missing some community representative. So some of these people, because they know Stacks, they're probably a good candidate for community representatives.
Mhm. Mhm. Are you there, Hero?
Yeah, no, that's it. That's all I want to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there could be some overlap, and we already have the D-Work board that I think it's it is your first iteration of trying to put some structure to, community support and moderation. So yeah, I think we should take advantage of the overlap
And
there.
it's bigger than this, because I'm thinking there could be equivalent team, but helps the Stacks Foundation for marketing, for growth,
Mhm.
like putting out different blogs or hosting Twitter space, grow really the presence of Stacks, not just looking after user, but also on the growth side. And there are many willing contributors in the Stacks ecosystem, but I think it would be a little bit more fair if they were compensated in some small or big ways. I think that's the little bit more sustainable, but utilizing the structure basically.
Yeah, it could be something unique too that the ecosystem has to offer if it starts to round off and really get fleshed out, because it essentially be a community effort, right? Or a community initiated, which just brings a whole different, feel to what the structures could possibly be and whatnot. But yeah, this is exciting stuff. Thank you, Kami, for the update on this, Hero. Okay, gotta be right back from Jason. Yeah, I'll continue here. Get into some of the action items now. This is DWork task, so this is a little bit of what we were just speaking to. Folks go into that DWork link. I'm pretty sure they'll find that moderation task that you started to flesh out a little bit. And I did start to talk about the way that this can flow into data things in terms of accountability and things like this as well, with the templates that we have for impact and things like this. But this is some of the theme updates from Jason, just reminding folks that we can change the theme to our GitHub pages. I have some work to do in updating our GitHub pages with the most up-to-date meetings and things like this. I should get on this soon. But here again, we're back to you, Hero, with some of the updates. I think you wanted to close this out, right? With some of these final updates here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you guys consider this as solved, I don't know, I wasn't there during the original early days of when this conversation was going. I did have a look, the original Stacks forum post from Jenny, and it was to do with 5 caps. So basically, I feel like 3 caps has been achieved, and 2 caps are ongoing conversation, which sort of shape or form their group take place and their relationship with the process itself, which may or may not become a cap in the end, but that's a work in progress. So it depends what you think. What I thought was best was to close it, so we mark from a caps perspective, we have the most important caps in place, and that any additional groups like diversities and ethics will issue a new issue on GitHub if needed, to mark an unfinished business or ongoing discussion about a separate thing, whereas this particular issue is more about the caps.
Yeah, the recruitment of the caps. Yeah, no, I think we can close it out. We can maybe wait for folks to give their 2 cents, but I mean, I'm of the opinion that it's fine to close after all this work put in for cap recruitment. And then any other issue, we can always reopen it, and if we need to, but we can always also have something more specific to a different type of cab work beyond recruitment as an issue, and this one could be closed out. But yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, I'm actually typing something up. I'll close it out in just a sec. But I agree with that thinking, right? Like the idea here is that we could just keep moving things along. And in this case, you've done a great job. We have the 3 cabs now, we have the membership. I think it's a good stopping point. And then when you're looking at like the future cabs and some of what we're going through, it actually fits pretty well in with what we do here in the working group. So like the contention around the ethics cab, for example, it's like some people were like, yes, it's a good idea. Some people are like, no, this doesn't make any sense. That's a great discussion item to have on these calls. And same with like an action item for like, we're trying to form or complete another cab. Well, that could be an action item, and those could be things that are discussed on these calls as well. So I mean, if there's a good overlap there, I think that's a great idea. And I do agree. Let's go ahead and close this one out. And if we need to reopen it or if we need to make a new one, it's easy enough to point things back and forth. But I think you did a great job on what we have here.
Thank you kindly, Jason. Hero. Beautiful. All right. This request for comment, I don't know. There's something about me that doesn't want to close it out. I think it's because every time I look at it, there's somebody else who like found it not too long ago and added a comment and sent it in a different direction. But yeah, I'll let you guys have some 2 cents on this as well. But yeah, it just, because it's a request for comment, I guess it's weird to close out. But yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about the code of conduct from Juliet.
I think the thing I'm just not clear on is what's the status of it?
I think it just, as folks come in, I think one of the things that we can do, just to get some more exposure, because it's been in request for comments mode for so long, is like do one last final, broader request for comment. Maybe I don't know, maybe we use it in some of the advocates flow, but I know we discussed that earlier in this thread some time ago, but yeah, I'm not too clear from Juliet on where it's at anymore. At one point, it seemed like we were just trying to get it out, and this is the request for comments state that it stayed in. So I'm not sure if she's waiting for some type of ratification process or something like this. But if she is, then we can possibly use the advocates flow for this. But
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. I think the final result will likely be a SIP, just on the governance track, because it'll end up like modifying the code of conduct that goes over the whole blockchain and everything like that. But if it's easier, I don't know, like I'm trying to think, is it easier to
I
just
think because it could potentially affect SIPs, maybe what I'll do is maybe I'll reach out to her and see what's up. And maybe she wants to come on a SIP call, explain or advocate for the changes or get some comments live. Yeah, what do you think? How about if I reach out to her and see what's up?
Yeah, it can't hurt at all. It makes sense, the SIP context.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Like just to know the status and like what are the blockers or like what are the next steps? Because I'd love to see it. Like we all agreed with it. I know the people in our working group initially when we were working on it, we were happy with it. I just don't know quite where it's left off from here.
Yeah, I think maybe some people just like think to overthink it or over analysis and just like waiting for, and just like maybe it just yeah. I think maybe if she want to restart it, so to speak, maybe I would say if it hasn't been posted on Stacks Forum, well, that's what I would probably recommend her to do, like post on Stacks Forum, or even like I can help her post on put a Twitter out, a request for, which is what I did for ecosystem DAO voting ideas. I did help tweet it out to get comments and direct people to Stacks Forum to comment officially. So yeah, I think there are things that I can help facilitate to push this forward. I think maybe it's part of my job. I don't know.
No, thank you kindly, Hero. Thank you. No, it would be a big help. And yeah, I'm sure Juliet would appreciate the extra push on this after putting in the work there. But yeah, let's get into some of the updates. I have some September updates in here for you guys. The advocates page for Gov navigation is there. We also have a little bit of upcoming issues for folks to dive into. Yeah, just a couple of the updates I gave earlier in the stand up. But yeah, I think a big part of these last couple of weeks have been making sure that we're on pace for the chapters merge. But this is one of the things that I didn't want to forget about to work on simultaneously, so that when folks come in from chapters, they have this to engage with. So I'm excited to see what happens here with our reps in place. And I'll be contacting reps, I think, today or at least soon, to get us going. I think Haas should be good, and some of the last technical things that we wanted to get done. We had an issue last time of things moving to formal proposals before we wanted them to, because it was just a time trigger. And without reps, the time trigger is very dependent on coordination through the reps. And we have reps now, but we've also moved away from the time trigger to avoid any hiccups in the coordination, even with reps. And we have like a command that some of the reps are responsible for after confirming that consensus has been reached across the clans. And so now things won't move into formal consensus without that command, and formal consensus won't complete until another command is sent off by one of the reps. This time it'll give an option for a range of time if the rep wants, and it can be edited as well. So this is some of the discussion myself and Haas had this week, ensuring that we can go with the reps in place and all the technical implementations are ready for them to use. But yeah, some clarifications in the standard of procedure as it relates to some of those new changes. But yeah, we should be as well working on bringing more and more folks into the clan systems. We have folks, even in advocates, that still are without clans. So so that the reps have something to work with, we'll be moving on that front too. But yeah, there's some of the updates folks can get into. A lot of changes to the website as well, folks haven't seen. But yeah, I think that'll be my update. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to mention in the thread, or we can suss it out here.
Just excited to see it come into life.
Yeah, no, thank you, Colin, man. The reps is a big step, I think, in seeing that it can get done smoothly. And I think we've learned a lot in the testing that we've had over the last few weeks. But yeah, let me see. Is anything here? Discussion items that we just mentioned. We have maybe a few coming up the pipe. We discussed the improving governance from Ragnar a little bit already. We have the advocates pivot from here from Haas. We have a lot of help from Jack on this front, particularly on the Twitter angle of Stacks Advocates. I think he grew our followers up to almost close to 100 after taking over from Doc in previous weeks. So there's, I think, some of the biggest growth efforts on that front from Jack, but also with the Stacks chapters coming in, this may be a steady influx of growth, depending on our first tests with these folks coming in. But with a lot of the focus on retention and a lot of what we've developed as advocates, working nicely with retention, even folks that aren't in our weekly meetings or as involved with as other advocates still find themselves in the did of things or things like this. So, but yeah, I think this will be added to once we kick off some of the chapter stuff as well. Maybe some updates are already due here. Any comments or questions there? There's some backlog here, I believe, from Jason. There's not so much updates here from the Longhouse efforts on Steam and things like this. The Longhouse just came out of a law recital, I think, still trying to get into the rhythm of things, but I'm still working in the background with folks on a bunch of different fronts, particularly folks working in land back movements and efforts. There's folks at Dada kind of connecting this to, or regenerative land efforts to the NFT space and the metaverse space. Other folks doing a similar thing. And the Longhouse has just recently wrote up their own documents. I think probably the only council that can do this, write up their own legal documents when it comes to land back approaches. And so I'm thinking about exposing some of this work to the folks doing some of these efforts simultaneously and see if there's any integration there. the work alongside some of these folks focused in digital fabrication should then help bring all of that into some practicality on the ground with the usage of actual tools and technology and the data there and in all of that context too. So I'll be excited to update this whenever we can get moving on it. I think there's just a lot of pulling together different threads at this point, but yeah, I still have not forgot about this and constant correspondence with folks important to seeing it through. See, the Fireside Chat series, I think is something, depending on if I can get a hold of Jack for this Friday, it'll be something that we focus on in Twitter Spaces, I think. We'll have some consultant help on, and hopefully some, even a dedicated host to some spaces like this. And I think it'll be a big part of that pivot issue as well. Yeah, let's see. I think you spoke on this a little bit in one of our previous sessions. Jason, I don't know if you wanted to, I think you brought it back into discussion, and maybe we're just waiting for some feedback for us.
Yeah, not much more to add. Just trying to think through like what this would look like, and probably now that I'm thinking about it, like as we have more abilities with smart contracts, there might be some possibilities. Like the trouble is, like an account has one set of keys, and if we're trying to share that between the three of us on this call, if something were to happen, then what happens to the account? You can't like roll the people or like change it out or do anything like that. So this is really just a call for like, what if we all wanted to share a block survey? Like, what's the best way to securely do that without me saying, okay, I'll just share the private key with everybody who has access to it? It's really a high level question, and it's something that, I mean, obviously we've been able to work around since I originally asked it, but it's still an interesting one to me. And I don't know, like we could keep it open just to see if there's anybody who, let's see, they're a grant wish list. Yeah, if there's anybody who would want to do something like that, or maybe we move it to a wish list grant and get it out of this repo. Like, it'd be nice to figure out what we could do rather than just glossing over it each time. But I also don't see, like, it's hard when you have a solution without a need. I think we have a solution based on a want, which would be able to share access to a Stacks application across multiple principals. But I don't know, if there's anything like completely driving that need right now outside of some of the ideas we have, like block survey being one. Yeah, that's the more of the main idea is like, if we're all working in a collective sense, like whether it be a company or a working group or something else, how could we share access to the same application and data? That's the kicker.
So it's like this is a reference to the multi-sig functionalities, right, that are now available.
Possibly, but even then, when you have multi-sig, what if one of your signers, you'd need a way to be able to replace your signers. Like, let's say, again, the block survey example, there's a bunch of survey data in this account. All three of us have a secret key to it. If somebody were to, it's like full rights to do anything with that account outside of that application. So it's more like how can we use an application in a group setting versus using an application in an individual setting. And I don't know the answer. It was just something that, like, in theory, like, imagine a company. You're like, okay, we have a block survey for a company. Well, how does every employee get the secret key to log in?
Yeah, Haas made something interesting for our MicroDAO tooling, where he ran into a thing where you can create a DAO or add people to a DAO, but then you run into a problem with removing people from the DAO, right? And I don't know, maybe there's a similar thing here, because one of the things he thought of was just instead of doing that, you would just create the other DAO with the new added members or the removal of the members. So maybe maybe that makes sense. I'm not sure, but no, I think this is something that we should maybe a clarity wizard, comes across one of the times that we talk about this and helps us out.
Is this to do with this website? Access to this website?
No, it's more like access to a Stacks application, right? Like, so when we use Stacks applications, we're logging in with a wallet. How could we share a login or share an experience across a group? And like another side of that too is when in the early days, I remember there's a tool called Radix that was being built, and the idea was that we all have Gaia hubs that are associated with each account, with each secret key. If there is a way to have that public information be associated, or like a way that all three of us as a team would have access to the same bucket of data, essentially.
Mhm.
And I imagine that there's an answer here, but again, it's just I don't know what we would use it for just yet. Like it needs a little something to run with as like an MVP to actually get it to something. Because at that time you can see too, we had XOR Drive, which I don't think is around anymore. Note Riot was an idea for taking notes and having them support on Blockstack. RunCod is not there anymore. Siegel is, and Block Survey is. So it's cool. Just like trying to think through, even if it was like two-factor auth, it's like we all have access to the same two-factor auth, but there's certain trade-offs that you make in trying to design something like this. And it's not, I think there's a way to do it that we just haven't found yet. But it's, again, like if we had a definite need where we needed to share one of these accounts, I think it'd be a lot easier to build out an MVP and say, like, this is how we should do it.
Yeah, I think it's understanding whether there's a market for it, market need for it, because some things are interesting one-off, but not necessarily like mass market demand-ish, I guess. Interesting.
No, I mean, even with just Block Survey, that I could see some examples of, even as advocates, where we could maybe already be using something like this. Maybe this is our first concrete need example that we need. But yeah, no, thank you, Connie, for going over it again, Jason. I think it is important not to gloss over it. And Radix at one point, there was a lot more focus on. Now I think Dan was mentioning that Hero, I think, is going to be removing support for Gaia, or paying for it. So yeah, these are important discussions to have. And I actually do think that there could possibly be a lot more need than we think for even just Block Survey. I'm not sure about Sigle, but Block Survey for sure. Let's see. Languages and translations. I know this is something that we've been wanting to tackle. I think where I left off on this was a DWork board task around translation. It includes the crowd-in link for the folks that are using it. Also includes a little bit more concrete of a process for folks to use if like they just come in to do things and want to contribute to translations, for a little bit of more accountability. I think as the issue Haas had at the time when we were discussing bringing that into the DWork flow. But yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this recently, Jason, or Hero. I know it's an important subject.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hero.
I'm thinking like we could leverage the structure that I was talking about. Like it could be part of a. I don't know if it's possible, Jason. You could have like different DAOs run under ecosystem DAO, but yeah, multiple sub DAOs almost. I think Nouns has some sort of things like that, but you have many different DAOs rather than just one DAO. And that DAO could be a translation specific task force, if you like.
Sure.
Whoever signs up for it and whoever wants to fund it as a bounty can contribute to a contract or pot of money, and that pot of money would distribute to this whoever signs up for doing the actual translation. Yeah, that's just initial thought.
Yeah, I think these are things to definitely experiment with. Definitely keep an eye on Stacker DAO Labs. They've been working towards this concept. And I know we have with City Coins too. It's like eventually, as the protocol grows, as you start to see more cities or variations online, more than likely the control will have to shift to a more local level or something similar. I mean, that'd be ideal. Then you have people on the ground actually controlling what happens. And with that in mind, some DAOs are entirely possible, or maybe it's just like one task force is for support and one task force is for translations, and people can choose to put their money. I had a few thoughts about that too. And then like on this idea of stacking too, like maybe there's a world where instead of trying to have the funds in the DAO to stack them to pay out for people, maybe there's a place where we say, if you want to help support the support group, stack your stacks and send the rewards here for a cycle or your choice of number of cycles. And it's a general, it'd be a contract address that basically it would come in and it would be available for them to stack or to do payouts or to do anything else. So I mean, there's a lot of little bits of the flow we can fit here, but I would say from the like with two really good task force being translation, because we see a lot of that work in the Advox group, and we see a lot of that work in some of the other communities, and then support being something that like would benefit everybody. Those are kind of two interesting ways to test the idea in two fields.
Yeah, because the way I think about the ecosystem DAO is a public service that would benefit. It's almost like public goods. All this support for the ecosystem, it benefits everyone. So it's almost like funding a public service, public goods.
For sure, for sure. No, I'm really excited to see if this model can take off, Hero. It can fill in a lot of gaps in the ecosystem, and possibly start a snowball effect, right? In terms of real strong community push, from a lot of different angles and important angles.
Yeah, maybe it's Stack Chapter is part of it, because they do a lot of local work, and maybe that's part of their role for their region or country to do that sort of stuff, or in addition to do real life events, but because it's so sort of directly related to their country, maybe they can take up part of that job and they would receive some funding for it as well in addition. But yeah, I think what I really want to do is actually I just need some time to sit down and actually just map it out, and I'll create some sort of diagram to demonstrate the idea and show everyone.
That'd be beautiful, Mai. Yeah, I mean, as you're talking too, with this onboarding team focus that we have, to bring in chapters folks, we have the guide, right? Making sure that folks touch base on some important things, and funneling folks into what this turns into could be in addition to that guide, to make sure that everybody that comes through chapters, through advocates, it becomes aware of this. I don't know how fleshed out it can be in the coming weeks, but if it pops up anytime in that time frame, we may start to get some help in that front with folks coming in the local chapters, particularly the translation angle. But yeah, no, this is good. Thank you. I'm glad we get into this again. It's just the three of us, but it's been really insightful session as always. Yeah, I think that's it. And we're 5 minutes over time. I didn't even realize. So thank you kindly, y'all, for turning this into a nice meeting of updates and some productive paths forward.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys too. I appreciate it. Always a good time.
Always. Thank you kindly, Jason. Hero.
You guys.
All right. All right. I'll stop the recording. All right.